Halo, assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, teman-teman mahasiswa Magister Teknologi Pendidikan Universitas Muhammadiyah Jakarta. Yang kami hormati Bapak Dr. Dirgantara Wijaksono, MPD, selaku dosen pengampu desain instruksional pada mata kuliahnya. Kami dari kelompok 1 akan melakukan presentasi, yaitu sebuah kajian dari diskusi kami. Kita kebagian melakukan pembahasan tentang Instructional Design, Theories and Models, The Learner-Centered Paradigm of Education Volume 4, yang diedit oleh Charles M. Regal, Brian J. Beauty, Rodney M. D. Myers. Oke, di kelompok kami itu ada 6 orang, ada Khairina Tiasti Andini, lalu ada Adinda Rosmanda Aisyah, Eno Kurniasi, Putri Novitasari, dan saya sendiri Indra Munawar. Itu ada sekitar 3 unit dalam buku itu, diantaranya unit pertama tentang Fundamental Principles of Learner-Centered Paradigm of Education, nanti akan disampaikan oleh Adinda. Lalu di sini di unit 2 ada More Details Design for the Learner-Centered Paradigm. Lalu ini akan disampaikan oleh Miss Nina and Miss Putri Novitasari. And then unit 3 Step Toward the Learner-Centered Paradigm. Ini akan kita sampaikan melalui Ibu Eno Kurniasih dan Ibu Tiasti Andini untuk unit terakhir. Kelompok pertama ini dalam pembelajaran e-learning kita akan melakukan presentasi, mudah-mudahan lancar ke depannya. Adapun tim kami sudah melakukan diskusi untuk kelompok 1 mata kuliah desain instruksional ini. Sini ada Miss Nina, Miss Putri, Miss Tias, ini Miss Dinda and Miss Eno. Oke, kita mulai dari pertama. Kita akan membahas tentang the learner-centered paradigm of education. Jadi paradigma pendidikan yang berpusat pada peserta didik. Nah, ini saya unit 1 kebetulan. Di sini prinsip kompetensi berdasarkan pendidikan. Tapi perlu teman-teman ketahui bahwa nanti pada saat presentasi ke depan mungkin beberapa teman-teman yang lain akan melakukan presentasi tapi mungkin menggunakan bahasa Inggris. Kalau saya karena belum mahir jadi bahasa Indonesia aja dulu. Pokoknya intinya bahwa paradigma pendidikan berpusat pada peserta didik. Ini temanya gitu kan. Kenapa kita melakukan presentasi pakai bahasa Inggris? Karena kalau di bahasa Indonesia kan agak sulit juga gitu. Jadi mohon maaf teman-teman juga yang kami hormati, dosen pengampu Pak Bombom. Nanti ke depan setelah ini saya akan kasih kesempatan ke teman-teman di kelompok kami maksudnya untuk melakukan presentasi tapi menggunakan bahasa Inggris. Jadi nanti tolong dicerna. Oke, silahkan yang pertama ada Adinda yang akan menjelaskan Principle for Task Centered Instruction. Silahkan Adinda.
Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Adinda and I will present about 5 guidelines for learner-centered education. First, we have attainment-based instruction. It means that the learner is a must to mastering the topic before move to another topic. Second is task-centered instruction is where the learner will be situated to the environment that has connection to the skills and the knowledge that we achieved. Third, personalized instruction is based on the goals and the nature of the learner. Fourth, change rules. In this part means that the teacher's roles are way much different than before. Right now, the teachers are become the supporter instead of the main source. The last one is the change curriculum. The change curriculum is the changes of the paradigm of education according to the era or the year that we are into. We have task-centered instruction and yes, actually like that way. First, we have task environment. We have to see the environment from the learner itself. Before we give the learner the task, we have to see the environment, the background, the not experiments, but experiences, and the way they see their environment of the learner itself actually. Scaffolding is the way to help the learner to achieve the goals, and also these are tools that we can use to make us something. Okay, so as we speak, teachers change roles. The roles of the teachers are changed these days. Teachers were used to be the source of the knowledge, and now in this millennium era, the teachers are the one who will provide the knowledge and will guide the students to achieve the goals. Let's see, we have teacher roles and learner roles, and also we have technology roles. First, teacher roles. Assist learners in setting goals. Okay, so as the teachers, of course, we have learner. To assist the learner to setting goals, we have to see the background of the learner itself. After that, we can assist in setting the goals for her or him. Second, we have assist learners in designing tasks. Every learners are different. So it means that the design tasks for every learners are way also different. Third, we have facilitate the task performance and learning. It means after we know the experience, the background, and also the way the learners study, we can see what kind of facilitate that we can give to the learners so they can achieve the task performance and how they can learning efficient. Fourth, evaluate performance. After we process, we see the way they improve themselves, we can evaluate their performance. And also, one of the teacher roles are mentor of the learner. Like I said before, teacher are used to be the center or the source of the knowledge, but now teacher as the supporter. So once or twice we give the example, and that's our duty as the mentor, and the rest let the learner do what they want to do. Okay, now we are talking about learner roles. First, active learner. Active learner means a learner who is active to find or searching for information and also have a curiosity how and what the things that they want to know. Self-regulated learner. We can say that passive learner, what I'm trying to say is like the learner is trying to learn by himself. And learner as a teacher. It means that even the learner himself or herself can be a teacher through the experiences. And we are also talking about technology roles. So first, technology roles. We can use YouTube, laptop, um, phone, tab, anything to gain the information. And the last one, the main important things in instructional design is curriculum. What is curriculum? What is curriculum? The key of curriculum is about what to teach. Curriculum is about expanded but also fundamentally restructured. We have 4 things in curriculum that we have to know. First, core subjects. There are 4 fundamentally restructured subjects, and those are math, science, literacy, and social studies. And then we have also innovation skills. In other words, that we want to see the vision, the mission, the purpose of the curriculum itself. Well, different corporation, different school have a different innovation skills. But mostly we will talk about how to be active learner. We can also see in curriculum we see information, media, technology skills. Information we can get anywhere, anytime, and from where. Information we can get from TV, we can get from our parents, our friends. It's depend on how information that we can get. Media, we can use the media that we can create by ourselves. For example, in science, we can create something that real so the students can learn from the media itself. Technology skills. Technology skills means that we are learning from the technology itself. For example, we watch something from YouTube and after that we apply it. That's a simple case. And also the last thing is life and career skills. Each curriculum has a different purpose and the goals according to the life and the career skills that every learner wants to study about. Well, it depends on who create this and what is the motivation and also how to achieve that. Thank you.
Oke, thank you very much. Terima kasih banyak, Dinda. Selanjutnya yaitu ada Miss Nina yang akan menyampaikan presentasinya.
Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Next, I'm going to explain about Unit 6. It's about designing maker-based instruction. So we consider making to be an activity in which students can connect to a broader skill set that may help them succeed in an ever more design and technology-oriented world. These skills include collaboration and teamwork, critical thinking, problem solving, and creativity and imagination. We also believe content can be layered on in thoughtful ways in response to teacher or students' needs. The values that we can get from these activities are learning through doing, situated within a community, active and self-directed. And there are at least 3 situational principles that can guide use and integration of making practices in an instructional making environment by first designing the makerspace, second, forefronting content or purpose, third, providing learner guidance. Next, in Unit 7, I'm going to explain about the designing collaborative production of digital media. So, there are 2 key ideas define the new literacy's perspective. First, literacy is reinterpreted as primarily a social-cultural phenomenon rather than a physiological one. The second idea, a new literacy's perspective, focuses on the ontological shift that occurs as digital technologies reshape how and what people learn as they participate in literacy's practice. Next, I'm going to explain about theoretical foundation of NLP, which stands for Neuro-Linguistic Programming. So, in universal and situational principle of NLP, there are 4 broad categories of principle with some attention to situational warning. One is production-oriented approach to learning. 2 is the importance of critique and reflection. 3 is the presence of an authentic audience for work. And 4 is primary teaching as mentorship. And the implementation issues that we can get is in our design process, we drew upon insights from how participants use digital media and technology to learn in these informal settings rather than using formal education models to inform the design of informal learning spaces. And the last one is Unit 8 is about designing games for learning. The game-based approach to instruction seeks to promote learning through rich, immersive experiences in design environments that simulate to some degree relevant real-world conditions and challenge learners with authentic, situated, and increasingly difficult problems. So why the reason for using games for learning? Games capitalize on the relationship between action and cognition, learning by doing. Games also promote team development, social learning, and social cohesion. Next, games enhance learner engagement and efforts. Games also can provide a safe environment for learning. And the last, games are customizable. The values that we can get is first, the development of situated problem-solving skills, which games promote by presenting learners with obstacles that require instant action to overcome. Next, the promotion of transfer to real-world tasks. And the third, the enhancement of feelings of self-efficacy. And the last, the appreciation of play as fundamental source of learning experience. And this is the last part, is about universal principles. There are 5 categories there, and the category 1 is creating a vision of the game. Category 2, designing the game space. Category 3, designing the instructional space. Category 4, considerations for designing this game space. Category 5, considerations for designing the instructional space. That's all from me. Hi Rina. Next, I will give it to Putri. Thank you so much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Terima kasih banyak Miss Nina. Selanjutnya Miss Putri, silakan presentasinya.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I am Putri. I will present about designing instruction for self-regulate learning. Okay, this is Yeo Hu. Is an assistant professor in the Department of Instructional Design and Technology from Indiana University. And then we have Charles M. Bregelut. Is a distinguished educational research who focus on paradigm change in education, the design of high-quality instruction, and the system for the learner-centered paradigm of economic. Editor forward. Editor forward is like content, learners, learning environment, instructional development constraints, and then values. Option about what is important. What is important about ends means like learning goals. We have to study about what we achieve about our goals. About means, instructional methods, how we can provide instructional method. And then about priorities. Priorities is criteria for successful instruction. We have to know about our first priority, about power to make decisions about the previous three. We can see about the picture, theoretical background. First one are related another one. Behavioral, determinants, environmental, personal. It's for example like we study on Starbucks, but we think and we feel so very crowded in Starbucks, so we have to move to a library to make it some comfort ambience. And then we have values. Values have first we have to planning before effort. We have to self-efficacy, cognitive, we have to action, motivational, and then performing. Performing is during effort, continuous change in self-efficacy. It's like process, goal setting, strategy, how to action, and then we have to monitoring about our result. And then changing interest or value expectancy. And the last, reflecting. Reflecting is after effort from the result of the test basis for future tests. And then judgment, evaluation, test experience building, and then new interests or values appraisal. So what is self-regulate learning? Self-regulate learning, or SRL, has been studied as an effective way to promote learning. Successful SRL instruction can be achieved by implementing the universal principles in this capture and using the situational principles in appropriate situation. SRL instruction should use a problem or project-oriented task in which learner play an active and central role in their learning. Teachers should provide opportunities for learner to practice the SRL skills and knowledge with feedback, and if necessary, teachers should also provide instruction on SRL skills. And then design instructional coaching. Design instructional coaching. Instructional coach make a very important contribution to school improvement by partnering with teachers to help them find better ways to reach more students. The mic focus on high leverage practice. First, we have to community building, how to building the community. We have to community, and then in second, then content engagement, and then instruction and formative assessment. Okay, for the last, designing technology for the learner-centered paradigm of education. Charles M. Reglut is a distinguished educational researcher who focused on paradigm change education, the design of high-quality instruction, and design of technology system for LCP of education. Universal principles. First, we have to record keeping for student learning. And 2, planning for student learning. And 3, instruction for student learning, and then assessment for student learning.
Okay, thank you Miss Putri. Okay, next Miss Eno, please you present.
Halo, Assalamualaikum. This is Eno Kurniasi from Group 1. I will explain about the design instructional with Unit 3, Chapter 12 and 13. Firstly, wait a minute. Maybe you can see the PPT. Unit 3, Step Toward the Learner-Centered Paradigm. The 4 chapters in Unit 2 present some emerging instructional design theories that reimagine how instruction and learning take place, focusing particularly on learning that happens outside the classroom and how it can be tied to in-class instruction, because these approaches are all working in or perhaps more precisely trying to work around the current paradigm of content focus and the time-bound instruction. We see this as a step towards new paradigm attempts to employ some of the learner-centered principle to disrupt the current system from within. Jadi maksudnya itu adalah saya bisa sedikit jelaskan di sini intinya aja ya teman-teman. Keempat bab ini di unit 3 itu mengujikan beberapa teori desain pembelajaran yang muncul, yang ditata kembali di mana bagaimana pengajaran dan pembelajaran berlangsung dengan fokus pada pembelajaran yang terjadi di luar kelas dan bagaimana hal itu dapat dikaitkan dengan pengajaran di dalam kelas. Itu sebenarnya gitu. Jadi karena semua pendekatan ini bekerja sama, atau mungkin lebih tepatnya mencoba untuk mengatasi paradigma saat ini yang berfokus pada konten dan pembelajaran terikat waktu, ya seperti biasanya di kelas gitu. Jadi lebih ada prakteknya di sini. Nanti akan dijelaskan di masing-masing chapter ya. Kemudian kami melihat ini sebagai langkah menuju paradigma yang baru supaya untuk menggunakan beberapa berpusat pada peserta didik. Jadi supaya lebih interaktif juga. Prinsipnya untuk ada sistem-sistem saat ini untuk peserta didik supaya lebih tertata rapi, biarpun ada prakteknya tapi tetap ada manajemennya seperti itu. Oke, saya jelaskan di sini sebentar. In the part 12, designing instruction for flipped classroom. Flipped classroom itu adalah di sini kalau misalkan pengertian harfiahnya adalah bolak-balik gitu kan, kelas bolak-balik, artinya bisa di dalam bisa di luar kelas gitu kan. Jadi mungkin teorinya bisa di dalam, nanti di prakteknya bisa di luar kelas. Ada combine di sini ya. Ini dicetuskan oleh Jeremy Schreier from Middle Tennessee State University. Kalau misalkan dia bisa mendefinisikan secara Inggrisnya itu yaitu flipped classroom definition. Flipped classroom instructional models relies heavily on technology to shift instructional practice that ditunggu sebentar, often implemented during class outside of the classroom. Typically of primary goal for flipped classroom instruction is to be provide time during class for students to make sense of course content together by completing meaningful engaging tasks. This kind of task instruction to encourage students to create and connect meaningful and coherent representation of knowledge is hallmark a learner-centered instruction. Yaitu jadi flipped classroom itu definisinya itu ya kelasnya lebih bergantung kepada teknologi untuk menggeser praktek-praktek yang selama ini udah ada di dalam kelas gitu, tapi bisa dilakukan juga di luar kelas gitu. Intinya gitu sih. Jadi bisa bolak-balik gitu, yang balik lagi ya flip classroom maksudnya seperti itu. Biasanya tujuan utama untuk pembelajaran ini kelas terbalik untuk memberikan waktu selama di kelas untuk siswa untuk memahami isi pembelajarannya bersama-sama dengan menyelesaikan tugas yang apa sih meaningful, artinya maksudnya yang teori yang berarti gitu kan, dan bisa menarik gitu. Pembelajaran ini berpusat pada tugas yang mendorong siswa untuk membuat dan menghubungkan representasi pengetahuan yang bermakna dan koheren. Ciri khas pengajaran berpusat pada peserta didik. Balik lagi kalau misalkan untuk ya memang sih untuk pembelajaran pasti untuk peserta didik gitu kan, tapi di sini kalau misalkan saya bisa ngelihat itu untuk pengajar itu cuma ngasih teori, terus kemudian yang lebih banyak implementasinya itu di peserta didik gitu. Jadi interaktifnya sih nggak nanti saya bahas di gamification itu akan lebih seru lagi sih gitu. Jadi kalau di classroom seperti itu aja intinya gitu. Nanti Prof Bomom atau teman-teman bisa tambahkan. Kemudian saya kembali di slide berikutnya. The importance of flipped classroom design in the context. The flipped classroom provides a viable instructional model for practitioner who are concerned about the both teaching in learner-centered way and ensuring that all course content is addressed. Terus kemudian the values of the flipped classroom are the learners are learning to be responsible, the learners are able to think logic, learners are to be active learners will learn to be efficient gitu. Jadi kemudian untuk universal methods-nya use number 1, use of all class activities to encourage student reflection and elicit a response from students. Number 2, use in class tasks to build new knowledge, part of learning community. Number 3, use the same instructional approach for out of class activities and in class tasks. Saya jelaskan di sini teman-teman. Jadi di flip classroom itu konteksnya itu adalah memberikan model pembelajaran yang layak bagi praktisi yang peduli tentang kedua pengajaran itu dengan cara berpusat pada peserta didik dan memastikan bahwa semua itu bisa dihandle gitu. Sebenarnya gitu aja sih. Jadi ada teori, ada praktek. Ya sih yang sekarang banyak ini ya udah sering dilakukan di sekolah-sekolah juga sebenarnya untuk flip classroom. ongoing lah, artinya seperti itu. Kemudian nilai-nilai apa sih yang ada di flipped classroom itu gitu. Itu jadi peserta didik itu bisa lebih bertanggung jawab, bisa berpikir logis, bisa pembelajarannya lebih aktif, kemudian untuk belajar juga menjadi lebih efisien. Kemudian metode universalnya itu kelas mendorong refleksi siswa dan mendapat tanggapan dari siswa. Yang kedua, membangun pengetahuan baru bagi sebagian dari komunitas pembelajaran. Yang ketiga, pembelajaran di luar kelas dan tugas di dalam kelas. Nah, itu combine gitu ya, kayak mergernya seperti itu. Kemudian saya kembali lagi untuk slide berikutnya. Situational principle are based on instructional approach used and are determined by aligning the components of the approach with the universal principle for flipped instruction. Situational principle for a discussion approach, from a problem-based instruction approach, implementation issue. Care must be taken. A flipped instruction does not devolve into lecture homework cycles of instruction. Initially, student may react negatively. Teacher may find approach time-consuming. Teacher may have difficulties in raising students' ways of thinking. Nah, kembali saya jelaskan di sini. Menyajikan teori. Nah, prinsip institusional itu pada pendekatan pembelajaran yang digunakan dan ditentukan dengan menjelaskan komponen, yaitu metode dari pendekatan tersebut dengan prinsip universal, yaitu flipped classroom. Prinsip situasionalnya itu pendekatan diskusi, kemudian pendekatan pembelajaran berbasis masalah gitu. Dalam implementasinya juga sebenarnya ada masalah juga di sini teman-teman gitu kan. Jadi instruksi flipped classroom itu tidak berpindah di sini, harfiahnya tidak berpindah ke siklus pengajaran kuliah atau pekerjaan rumah. Jadi di sini itu karena ada combine dari di dalam di luar kelas gitu. Jadi kayak apa sih, enggak lebih terpusat gitu kan. Jadi teorinya dikhawatirkan itu enggak terlalu dapat di sini gitu, karena di dalam kelas teorinya udah dapat, di prakteknya itu nanti sedikit tidak terfokus gitu kan, lebih ya itulah, kadang kalau misalkan praktek kan pasti lebih variatif ya, studentnya kemana-mana gitu kan. Kemudian yang kedua, siswa dapat bereaksi negatif awalnya gitu kan. Nah, ini implementasinya seperti itu sebenarnya. Di sini dijelaskannya seperti itu, kata pencetusnya seperti itu. Kemudian guru mungkin menganggap pendekatan ini menghabiskan waktu again kan. Kalau misalkan di dalam kelas, berarti kalau guru sih kayaknya lebih the comfort zone. Kalau misalkan di dalam kelas ya udah variatif, kita bisa manage kelas. Kalau di dalam kelas itu lebih gampang gitu kan. Pokoknya intinya di dalam kelas aja. Tapi kalau misalkan di luar kelas itu udah ya waktunya lebih banyak, text time lah gitu, seperti itu. Terus kemudian guru mungkin mengalami kesulitan dalam mengatasi beragam cara berpikir siswa, ya sedikit complicated di sini gitu. Cuma sebenarnya bagus juga sih combine major untuk belajar seperti ini di flipped classroom gitu teman-teman. Kemudian untuk slide-nya saya cek lagi. This chapter presents a theory of designing learner-centered flipped classroom instruction. I developed universal institutional principle for flipped instruction using a theoretical framework based on social theories of learning and instructional design theories that support learner-centered instruction. The universal principle is set the component level of instructional design and are implemented with broader international approach. Di sini teman-teman bisa lihat di slide-nya ada framework for the fundamental principle of flipped classroom. Jadi ada information students, kemudian menghasilkan experience, reflect on object of thought, transform objects of thought. Kemudian di informasi studentnya itu terjadilah community of learners. Ya udah, akhirnya ada komunitas pembelajaran gitu. Itu emang lebih complicated banget sih, karena ada di dalam dan luar kelas gitu. Cuma bagus banyak juga sekarang udah banyak prakteknya di sekolah-sekolah. Itu untuk flip classroom. Kemudian untuk yang gamification saya jelaskan di slide berikutnya. Kembali saya jelaskan untuk chapter 13 gamification design for instruction. Ini dicetuskan by Carl M. Kapp from Bloomsburg University. He is a professor of instructional technology at Bloomsburg University. He teaches online learning, instructional game design and gamification. Game design. Teman-teman pasti akan lebih lebih apa ya, lebih senang karena dengarnya kalau game senang gitu, pasti orang-orang seperti itu. Kemudian di sini dijelaskan gamification definition. Gamification is an emergent approach to instruction that facilitate learning and encourage motivation through the use of game elements, game scenes, and game-based thinking. In gamification, the students do not play an entire game from start to finish. Rather, they participate in activities that include elements from games such as earning points, overcoming a challenge, or receiving badges for accomplishing a task. The importance of the gamification design focused on problem solving with meaningful choices and gamification elements used to engage and motivate learners. For content gamification, that content must lend itself to incorporation of elements such as story, challenge, curiosity, mystery, and so forth. Di sini saya jelaskan teman-teman, sedikit saya jelaskan. Untuk pembelajaran gamifikasi oleh Carl M. Kapp dari Bloomsburg University adalah dia seorang profesor ya di Universitas Bloomsburg, mengajar online, pembelajaran online, desain game, pembelajaran desain game tentang game dan gamifikasi. Definisinya adalah desain gamifikasi itu pendekatan yang muncul untuk pembelajaran, memfasilitasi pembelajaran dan mendorong motivasi melalui penggunaan elemen-elemen game, mekanik game dan pemikiran berbasis game. Dalam gamifikasi, para siswa tidak memainkan seluruh permainan dari awal hingga tidak memainkan, ya kan, hingga akhir, melainkan mereka berpartisipasi penuh dalam aktivitas yang memasukkan elemen dari game seperti mendapatkan poin, mengatasi tantangan, atau menerima reward untuk menyelesaikan tugas, gitu kan. Jadi kalau misalkan reward kalau untuk yang siswa ini di sini nilai ya, tapi kalau misalkan di dunia pekerjaan itu kan pasti reward biasanya mungkin mendapatkan uang atau mendapatkan voucher atau mendapatkan mungkin part of jalan-jalan ke luar negeri atau seperti itu ya. Kemudian untuk pentingnya pembelajaran gamification itu fokus pada pemecahan problem solving ya, pemecahan masalah dengan pilihan bermakna dengan elemen gamifikasi yang digunakan untuk melibatkan dan memotivasi peserta didik. Itu. Yang kedua, untuk gamification konten harus cocok dengan penggabungan unsur-unsur seperti cerita, tantangan, rasa ingin tahu, misteri, dan sebagainya. Nah ini kalau misalkan saya ngelihat di pentingnya gamification itu yang lebih bisa bisa create apa sih yang harus lebih kreatif adalah pengajarnya. Ya oke, gitu. Gimana sih cara supaya untuk student itu bisa lebih interaktif gitu dengan penciptaan game-game dalam pendidikan pengajaran itu lebih menyenangkan gitu. Mungkin ya kalau misalnya game itu harus menyenangkan seperti itu harfiahnya semua. Tapi tetap ya kontennya tetap pembelajaran gitu. Kemudian untuk slide berikutnya saya akan ini ya, di sini cuma saya kasih poin-poinnya aja. The values of gamification classroom are highly value, engagement is highly value, increasing effectiveness, efficiency is less important. Nih di dalam gamification nih ya, jadi value-nya itu terjadilah beberapa yang didapatkan nilai-nilai untuk bisa di gamification classroom itu. Kemudian peserta didik juga lebih ter-challenge ya, optimal challenge for the learners. The teacher is primarily in control and priorities means by providing course structures and reinforcement schedule learners choice bounded by various parameter. Jadi kalau misalkan saya bisa lihat di sini teman-teman, untuk para pembelajar lebih memupuk motivasi dan keterlibatan sangat dihargai. Gitu. Jadi lebih interaktif ya, pembelajar lebih banyak lebih banyak pertanyaan gitu, keterlibatannya interaktif untuk meningkatkan efektivitas. Tapi di sini ada noted juga efisiensi kurang penting. Ya kalau misalkan untuk gamification pasti akan banyak nggak efisien sih, pasti gitu, pasti akan panjang durasinya gitu kan, tapi memang efektivitasnya akan lebih meningkat. Kemudian peserta didik juga akan more challenge gitu ya, tantangannya banyak, lebih optimal buat untuk peserta didik. Nah, tapi di guru terutama untuk mengendalikan tujuan, prioritas dan serta menyediakan struktur pembelajaran ini itu dan jadwal penguatan. Jadi harus ada suatu materi atau teori yang dibikin oleh pengajar lebih struktur, biarpun ini gamification gitu kan, tapi tetap harus ada struktur kuat yang supaya kalau misalkan peserta didik, kalau game itu kan udah fun ya, kadang melenceng kemana-mana gini-gini gitu kan. Nah itulah peran dari pengajar itu supaya lebih terkontrol gitu kan, sesuai dengan aturan dan parameter. Ini sih menurut saya, nanti bisa ditambahkan oleh Prof. Mumum atau teman-teman. Prinsip universalnya itu ada keterikatan pilihan kompetensi prinsip situasional. Untuk menentukan gambar struktural atau konten, gamification itu ada sih beberapa gitu, contoh ya untuk gamifikasi itu, seperti penambahan misteri atau dimasukin cerita gitu kan, teman-teman bisa lihat kan gitu. Kalau misalkan saya bisa kasih contoh seperti di ruang guru gitu kan, itu nggak hanya teori ya kan. Kalau misalkan untuk menjawab, misalkan ada pertanyaan A, apakah bla 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 gitu. Nah kalau misalkan di ruang guru, ini contoh ya gitu kan, di gamification, tapi nggak melulu game gitu. Pertanyaannya teori, apakah untuk pertanyaan A, apakah bla 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 bla. Kemudian pengajar itu nanti akan menjelaskan, karena A adalah jawabannya gini, B B B B B gitu. Tapi dia nanti ada prakteknya, ada game-game tertentu, misalkan teman-teman ingin tahu nggak gitu, kenapa sih jawabannya B, katanya gitu kan. Nah ini karena ini kalau misalkan dicampur sama ini, memang akan terjadi gelembung-gelembung udara seperti itu gitu. Jadi dibikin fun gitu, jadi supaya untuk peserta didik juga lebih bisa mengingat dan lebih nggak terlalu kalau misalkan teori aja kan kurang ini ya, kurang nangkep lah di pikiran kita gitu, di peserta didik biasanya sih seperti itu. Kemudian konten-kontennya menanamkan siswa dalam konten dan minta mereka berperan dan berinteraksi dengan konten saat belajar gitu kan. Nah ini lebih rame kalau gamification, pasti. Makanya dibilang di sini efektivitas meningkat, tapi untuk efisiensi pasti berkurang. Itulah ya, ada plus minusnya. Kemudian untuk gamification situasional itu bagian dari kurikulumnya lebih besar dan sebaiknya sulit bagi siswa untuk termotivasi dari waktu ke waktu gitu. Ya sih, maksudnya gimana ya, kalau misalkan gamification itu kan itu lebih teorinya itu mungkin kalau menurut saya gitu ya, untuk pemaparan teorinya nggak terlalu banyak, tapi banyak bukan praktek. Jadi explanationnya itu by gamification itu gitu kan. Jadi pemaparannya itu supaya lebih fun gini-gini gitu, tapi secara teorinya itu mungkin nggak terlalu terpusat. Nah itu yang kadang siswa itu jadi keenakan dalam maksudnya prakteknya enak, fun gitu, cuma maksudnya jadinya secara increasing itu nggak terlalu signifikan gitu untuk pembelajarannya, pecah ya gitu, tapi senang tapi pecah gitu tapi ini sih ya, ini plus minus gitu, senang tapi nggak terlalu berpusat gitu kan. Nah nanti kan ada beberapa teori juga, nanti teman-teman bisa lihat dijelaskan oleh teman-teman yang lain. Kemudian Di sini kalau misalkan saya bisa cek di sini, use both kinds of gamification when both situational profile gitu. Jadi kalau bisa di gamification itu eh misalkan ya nggak kayak kita kembali ke flip classroom. Kalau misalnya flip classroom bisa di dalam kelas, nanti di luar kelas. Nah tapi kalau misalnya gamification nggak bisa kayak gitu. Kalau gamification itu kedua jenis kedua jenis paralel dalam atau di luar kelas, atau part dari pengajar atau peserta didik itu harus benar-benar siap gitu kan, udah siap baru bisa dilaksanakan gitu. Jadi nggak bisa part of part gitu, jadi emang harus combine, harus siap bener gitu kan, baru bisa terjadi pembelajaran gamification gitu teman-teman. Gitu sebentar ya. Kemudian untuk slide berikutnya nanti teman-teman bisa baca sendiri. Jadi creating and maintaining student engagement, jadi untuk bisa maintain peserta didik itu engagementnya seperti providing challenge, story, characters, mystery, competition, cooperation, space retrieval, retrieve practice. Teman-teman bisa lihat di sini gitu kan. Jadi menciptakan dan menjadi keterlibatan siswa dalam tantangan, narasi, karakter, misteri, kompetisi, kerjasama, pengambilan spasi, prakteknya, praktisnya gitu kan. Kemudian untuk encourage students to make meaningful and constitutional choice with clearly defined rules and within a safe environment. Teman-teman bisa baca di sini. When the amount and complexity of the content may be overwhelming, give the student minimal control over content creation, pacing, and sense to support. Saya bisa dijelaskan di sini untuk mendapatkan siswa untuk membuat pilihan yang bermanfaat dan konsekuensinya dengan aturan yang ditetapkan dengan jelas dan dalam lingkungan yang aman. Ketika jumlah atau kompleksitas konten mungkin berlebih-lebihan, diberikan siswa minimal kontrol atas urutan konten. Nah itu dia ya, kalau misalkan gamification itu lebih, yaitu interaksinya lebih lebih banyak gitu kan. Jadi harus ada kontrol-kontrol yang atau konten-konten atau langkah-langkahnya itu yang bisa membatasi atau mengkontrol dari suatu pembelajaran gamification ini gitu kan. Kemudian di sini dijelaskan juga kontennya kompleksitas rendah, beri dia kontrol yang besar nih. Kembali ke kontrol gamification. Kemudian untuk pengajar juga memberikan pengajaran di individu diperlukan tumbuhkan sosialisasi dan menciptakan keterhubungan antara siswa dalam satu kelompok. Kemudian communication content mental siswa mengambil peran dan berpartisipasi dalam kegiatan itu, memungkinkan mereka untuk mengamati dan meniru tindakan realistis. Ketika menggunakan gamification struktural, bantu siswa untuk berbagi prestasi mereka dengan orang lain. Yaitu tetap harus ada pengawasan juga sih teman-teman, ini menurut saya. Kemudian next conclusionnya adalah di sini ya teman-teman, saya bisa kasih untuk yang gamification ini. Kalau menurut saya popularitas dari keberadaan video game gamification dalam budaya modern dan meningkatnya penggunaan elemen-elemen game dalam segala hal, mulai dari situs web hingga mobil listrik, semuanya gitu gamification tampaknya masuk akal untuk mengasumsikan bahwa minat dalam gamification pendidikan akan terus berlanjut dan penggunaan dalam sistem sekolah di semua tingkatan akan tumbuh. Teman-teman bisa lihat ya, teknologi itu nggak stuck, terus akan berkembang gitu, developnya itu terus-terusan gitu kan. Banyak bermunculan inovasi dari mungkin dari pengajar atau peserta didik itu sendiri, atau mungkin dari ilmuwan dari berbagai disiplin ilmu gitu kan. Itu terus akan akan berkembang gitu. Para pendukung gamification bermanfaat banyak metode yang efektif dan mendorong siswa melalui konten dan memotivasi mereka untuk lebih belajar ya, karena lebih fun kan. Sebuah meta analisis 24 pelajar itu baru-baru ini menyimpulkan bahwa baru-baru ini menyimpulkan bahwa gamifikasi memberikan efek positif, tapi tetap harus ada kontrolnya ya. Tetap kalau misalnya gamification gitu kan tidak melulu memang teknologi, tapi tetap harus ada pengawasan. Ini menurut saya gitu ya, karena kembali lagi kalau gamification itu kan hubungannya sama teknologi gitu, apalagi kalau misalkan untuk siswa-siswa gitu kan, mungkin SD atau SMP atau SMA itu perlu adanya pengawasan controlling dari pengajar dan orang tua. Itu sih menurut saya gitu. Biarpun fun gitu tapi tetap harus ada kontrolnya, karena mungkin ada suatu nilai-nilai yang harus diperhatikan supaya ini nggak cocok ya untuk siswa ini gitu kan. Ada partnya itu nggak bisa dijelasin di sini secara detail, tapi teman-teman bisa lihat untuk pembelajaran game itu kan apa namanya, lebih menyenangkan, tapi mungkin kalau saya bisa lihat di sini belum ada batasan-batasan yang apa ya, yang baku gitu. Yang do dance-nya itu mana sih gitu. Nah, itu perlunya ada pengawasan dari pengajar dan orang tua seperti itu. Kemudian ini gamifikasi memberikan efek positif tetapi dengan beberapa peringatan again ya kan, terkait dengan konteks yang sedang gamified dan peserta aktual dalam gamification. Ini ini dijelaskan oleh Hemerico Visto dan Sarsa 2014 halaman 1. Itu aja teman-teman untuk gamification classroom saya jelaskan di sini. Semoga bermanfaat dan selanjutnya akan dijelaskan oleh rekan saya selanjutnya. Terima kasih. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you Miss Eno, saya kira cukup jelas. Dan ini yang terakhir nih harus didengarkan, ada Miss Tias akan membahas tentang neuroscience, dan juga satu lagi apa ya Bu Tias, itu tentang GITT just in time. Silakan Miss Tias, your present.
Hello, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. This is me, Tiasti. I want to explain chapter 14 and also chapter 15 about design considerations for mobile learning and designing just-in-time instruction. So the first is chapter 14, Design Consideration for Mobile Learning by Thomas Cochrane and Fikil Narayan. I want to explain about 5 principles. The first is the foundation of mobile learning, types of mobile learning, values of mobile learning, principles in mobile learning, and neuroscience and brain-based learning. The first is the foundation of mobile learning. Sharpless and Cook, 2009, identified 3 distinct phases that have characterized the development of mobile learning: research and practice. There are 3 distinct phases. The first is a focus upon devices, and then the second is a focus upon learning outside the classroom, and the third is a focus on the mobility of learner. Mobile learning is the process of coming to know through conversations across multiple contexts amongst people and personal interactive technologies. There are 2 types of mobile learning. The first is informal, and then the second is for formal mobile learning. I want to explain what is the meaning of informal. The meaning of informal mobile learning is characterized by learning experiences that happen outside the classroom setting. For example, like this time when we have these serendipitous events like this COVID-19 cases, the characterized of informal learning can be captured and shared via a student's smartphone equipped with quality camera and then microphone and recording of contextual metadata via built-in. And this is what we call as informal mobile learning. While what the meaning of formal mobile learning is generally characterized by learning activities designed by a teacher and carried out in a classroom setting. So they are so different between the informal and then the formal mobile learning. And the values of mobile learning, that mobile learning provides an opportunity to democratize learning by enabling student-determined learning or heterogeneity. So what is heterogeneity itself? We can see that heterogeneity itself is a process. This is almost the same like pedagogy and then andragogy, and now this is heterogogy. So what is heterogogy? So we can explain in these matters that heterogogy is a learning that use some principles to use like long distance and then use technology. There's for example, and the difference from another step of pedagogy and andragogy is from the activity types that heterogogy is student-generated context. And the focus of control, if pedagogy is the teacher, andragogy is the student, so heterogogy is also the student. And then heterogogy have an epistemic redefinition, so it's not only cognitive but also epistemic redefinition. And heterogogy itself in the creativity knowledge is not only reproduction subject like pedagogy, not only a process of negotiation like andragogy, but heterogogy is reinitiation context shaping. And then due to ontological shift, heterogogy have reconceptualizing the role of the learner, and then as a self-perception, heterogogy should be active participation with a professional community. So that's are the differences between pedagogy, andragogy, and heterogogy. Next, the principles in mobile learning. There are 3 principles of mobile learning. The first principle is enable student-generated context. The first principle explains that mobile learning social media provide a powerful suite of personalizable tools for enabling students as a worker, self-directed learner, and also as a teacher. In the framework, mobile social media are reconceptualized from a purely social domain to an educational domain. So there's 2 domains in this enable student-generated context. The first is the purely social domain, and then the second is educational domain. And then the second principle of this mobile learning is enable student-generated context. Mobile learning enables pedagogies that focus upon student-generated context, moving from teacher-directed content delivery towards student-determined learning, as defined by what is pedagogy, andragogy, and heterogogy continuum. We can see this in the part chapter 14, and then like I've explained before, the differences between pedagogy, andragogy, and heterogogy. So the student have a goals. The goal of the student-centered pedagogy is to enable transformative learning experiences and produce creative, self-directed graduates. So the design of the mobile learning experience should focus upon facilitating students' creativity within a variety of contexts in beyond the classroom. And then the last one, the last principle is enable authentic learning experience. So what is it? Enable authentic learning experience. So the difference here that the principle of mobile learning should be authentic. So we cannot just copy, but it's also comes from the universal of principles of mobile learning. So we should be very active in the class of mobile learning, and then it's also authentic. It's come from our own ideas. And then I want to start what is very interested is the connection between neuroscience and brain-based learning. That this neuroscience and brain-based learning is also the part of mobile learning because the brain strengthens the patterns of connection, making each connection easier to create next time. And then the curriculum that makes use this fact would occasionally present to the students as a big picture and relating the subject matter material to the real world experience. So this mobile learning, we can say as technology based learning also. The fact is this is occasionally present and relating to subject matters. The first is the real world experience, and the second is the something that we can call it like big picture, relating the subject matter material to the real world experience. So this is the neuroscience and brain-based learning and the design consideration for mobile learning. Okay, this is again with me Tias, and I want to explain the chapter 15, designing GITT. What is GITT? The Gregor M. Novak and Brian J. Beatty explain what is GITT. So GITT is just-in-time instruction. GITT, just-in-time teaching or just-in-time instruction, teaching instruction, is an inductive pedagogy. It's come from Prince and Felder, 2007. The part is blending active in-class learning with web-based preparatory work. So this is the active in-class learning, and then another time is the web-based preparatory work. The evidence of students' understandings generated in the pre-class assignment is used to inform and shape the subsequent class content and activities. So before the tutor of GITT start the class, it also needed some pre-class assignment, and then we can get the information about the classes, about the people in the classes. So in a GITT class, students complete a considerable amount of online work in preparation for an interactive in-person session with an instructor. So to be the instructor of GITT, they should be certified. I want to explain the part of just-in-time teaching feedback loop. There's a circle around that. Just-in-time teaching feedback loop. The first is the tutor have a pre-class assignment. And then the second circle is the student's response. After the student responds, the instructor gives the analysis. And then they have the in-class feedback. The in-class feedback made the instructor give an in-class content. And then the circle is always progressive. So after the in-class content, it goes back to pre-class assignment. What is GITT itself? You can see that what is GITT in YouTube if you want to get more explanation. So, for example, this one, Kathy Mars teach a large enrollment introductory biology class. And then, in the preparation for the first introductory lesson of genetics, she posts a pre-class assignment on the course webpage and asks the student to submit responses electronically just before the class time. One of the questions in the pre-class assignments goes like this. Alison is driving with her parents when they get in a serious car accident. In the emergency room, her doctor tells Alison that her mother is fine, but her father Bob has lost a lot of blood and will need a blood transfusion. Alison volunteers to donate blood and finds out what her blood type is AB, while his dad Bob is type O. Miss Mars has two questions. The first is, can Allison donate blood to Bob? Why or why not? And then the second is, Allison, who is a biology student, begins to wonder if she is adopted. What would you tell her and why? This is the example of pre-class assignment in this GITT learning. And then there are typical pre-classes warm-up questions, a key feature of GITT pedagogy to prepare students for an interactive engaging in class lesson. And also give some experiences to the students to answer by their own authentic answers. So that I can say about GITT learning, and there are some situational principles and the variation in GITT methods due to discipline, and then GITT methods due to pedagogy, the variation based on the course, lesson, and activity and characteristics. Okay, that's all I can explain about just-in-time instruction. We can learn it more from the books, and also we can see the real matters, the real example in YouTube. This is for me. Thank you. I'm Tiasti. Coming back to you, Mr. Bom Bom. Thank you.
Oke, itulah tadi. Terima kasih banyak Miss Tias dan semuanya. Terima kasih. Kita sudah selesai melakukan presentasi kelompok pertama. Mudah-mudahan bisa dipahami bagaimana suatu paradigma pendidikan berbasis kepada peserta didik itu. Tadi ada gamification, ada juga kelas flip, terus juga ada banyak lagi tadi yang sudah dijelaskan oleh kelompok kami. Terima kasih banyak. Silahkan kalau ada yang mau bertanya, silahkan ikuti terus di Google Classroom-nya Mr. Bom Bom. Terima kasih banyak. Mohon maaf kalau ada kesalahan. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.